Hello, welcome to my studio. It is so good to have you here. If you are new, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. I'm going to go through a couple of my journals, and these are the very first journals that I ever got. This was the very first one, and it's a Dilutions, and these are the first 2 pages that I ever did. This one is just who the book belongs to with some small little notes about myself. And then this is a picture of me and my son when he was very little because I'm dedicating this book to him. So I want to show you the progression. So let's get started. So this was a tutorial where it was taking fashion models and then turning it into something else. So this was one lady, but then each of these trees is got the patterns of some of the other models that were on the runway at the time. This is my hand, and this was another tutorial, and so I've just got some little things again about me. And mostly I was learning in this one too, teaching myself how to do a background. And the background is acrylic, and then on top is, these were watercolor pencils. This was a tutorial on drawing leaves, and this was a tutorial about doing florals. Now, this was maybe 5 years ago, so I really don't remember whose tutorial, what tutorial, but this was just me working with my watercolors in this journal. Same here, just practicing. This was a tutorial, and it was really teaching me how to use gel matte medium for the first time and how to do a collage. This one I never finished, was going to start a face. This was a tutorial, and it was primarily about making the frames and how to connect two together. But here you can see this was one of my very first faces. I didn't even give the poor girl hair. And then how to create a collage background. This was from a church bulletin. Another collage. This is my aunt and this is me. And we were to cut out pictures of our faces and attach them to medieval clothes. So that's what that is. And then to create some type of a scenery around them. This one was a tutorial, but it was on how to make a journal cover. And so I changed it into something that I could do in my journal. This was one of those really fast tutorials. It was like 5 minutes, but I was just trying to be able to learn how to put my own writing, my own little phrase or saying or whatever. Also learning how to use different products all in the same thing, mixed media style. This was a tutorial, and frankly, since I've done this one, I've seen many of this tutorial where we learned how to use stencils inside of the plants, watercolor background, just again, learning mixed media. And this was a collage that I had learned in a tutorial about how to use acrylic paint on the back of magazine pictures and then fussy cutting them to be silhouettes. And then I created a place for the silhouettes to be. And we're just going to go on and on. This was a class about doing this background with bubbles, and then I did, this was an adult coloring book. Another tutorial. Now this was a tutorial from Maramy Small Art. And again, we're talking 5 years ago, and I couldn't tell you which one it was, but just learning about adding texture. This is got my first experiences with modeling paste. And then this was a tutorial that I still use this technique, and it's from Jane Davenport, and how you create this really wild background, and then how you take a dark color and just save the background for the woman's clothing. And again, I'm just practicing the same thing. This was a collage that I did, and I wanted to try again with the modeling paste and magazine pictures. And then this was a technique from Maramy Small Art, taking an egg crate and creating a stone wall. Again, I like this technique, so I did it again. And here's another one of my first faces. And then I just tried to, combine the two pages together to be a cohesive one. This was a class that I got as a gift, and it was Jane Davenport, and it was Fabulous Figures. This was a tutorial doing collage, and I don't remember who did it, but I remember that she was teaching about a product that I didn't have, so I just adapted it to myself. But again, I just love trying to make faces. And another collage that I'm not crazy about, but I'm sure you can get the idea. Here I was trying to do faces where I didn't obliterate the collaging, and I also learned how to put napkins on. So this was a napkin from the Dollar Tree and just collage. And in this one, I wanted to challenge myself to put more than one face in the same collage. More of the Fabulous Figures, and more of the make a fancy background and then block it out so that the background is their clothes. And then this was a learning to do an abstract. And first I did this one, and then I wanted to learn the technique better, so I did this one, and then tried to make them, again, all into one. A background, and that's not a very happy face, but I was trying. And my whole point is that I want you to see that even though I didn't do great, I just kept trying, and I just kept trying new things. And that's what I want you to understand in your art journal. Every page, obviously, is not a masterpiece, is not something I'm ready to tear out and hang on the wall, but I was learning and learning and learning. I thought this was wonderful. This was from a magazine, but it was a commercial for one of the famous national brand house paint companies. But this is all done in paper piecing, and I just thought it was beautiful. So I wanted to add it to my book. This was, I believe, this was maybe from Diane Reevely, but I used watercolor because I didn't own the inks and I didn't own the sprays, so I just kind of adapted it to myself with some doodling. This was a repeat of the one back here with the girl that was in the rain, this one. So I wanted to try to do it with my own twist. So I added a house and again the words. So just keep trying. This was a challenge from Mike Deacon, and the idea was to have 3, even though they're different, to have them be the same. Was it a success? Not really, but I enjoyed myself and I learned more techniques. And there's a face that needs work, doesn't it? But it's all okay. Now, this was a Maramy Small Art where she cut a face and then added other objects for the hair. And again, is she beautiful? Well, she was, and then I got hold of her. So now I'm going to switch to this book because it was about this time that I realized that I didn't always want to wait for dry time. And many times people were using square journals. And so I was feeling a little cumbersome trying to always convert a square tutorial onto my rectangle journal. So that's why I got this journal. And so here again, if you remember, there's those frames that I was practicing again, learning stencils again. And then here are those faces. And this one was, again, about the time I did this one. But you can see, I hope, this one I did a lot more doodling on. in an attempt to not overcome the focal point with the background and still trying to learn how to do faces. And then I did the same thing with this one, just trying to make the hair out of inanimate objects and don't have the background overwhelm. Obviously, I didn't feel like I arrived, and I still haven't arrived, but I was practicing those faces again. This was just my own. I was just tired of following other people, and I just wanted to see if I could create something kind of abstract using modeling paste again, using some phrases or words that I didn't cut out of a magazine. So that was that attempt. This is where I challenged myself to try to do just black and white. And so that was the result of that. This was this was Marimi Small Art again, where you created a background and then you doodled in some, and I think she used rubber stamps, but I didn't have rubber stamps at the time that fit the thing, so I just drew them in myself and then used white instead of a dark color to block out the background. And here's where I started some watercolors that, again, things from my own mind. So I'm going to go back to this one now and see where we're going with this. This was the same as the one I just showed you, where you created a background, but then you were to use a more translucent and using also something that was pearlized or something that was metallic. And then I used a stencil in the bubbles. We were to use stencils in the bubbles and then use first we did black, then we did the circles, then we did the stenciling in the circles, and then we used the pearlescent or the metallics on top. So that was that challenge. Now this was a challenge from Mike Deacon, and this was creating a city. And I love cityscapes. I love neighborhoods. I just love that. And so it was to use different types of papers that you had on hand to create houses. And then I just used Sharpie and put in all the details. This was a face I made not all that long ago, but I had this background that I really did not like. So I just glued her in, and now I like it. Again, working with the bubbles and backgrounds. Now this was a collage and a face that I did, and the background was using really big stencils and then trying to not have the background overwhelm the foreground or the focal point. Still needs work. So here I was just getting tired of following other people's tutorials, so I made these two girls on my own using some of the splatter techniques, and instead of completely doing their hair and something else, I did get a hold of a floral stamp, so I just did one floral image in each of their hair. And this was when I decided I wanted more color. So I tried, and I also was experimenting with making a man's face and not just a woman's face. So I made these two, but I wanted to incorporate more color. Never did anything with this. I did these two drawings while I was sitting and I was waiting for kids to come, and I was handing out candy. This was only about maybe 2 years ago. And this was my first time using, they were a water-based marker, but they're not alcohol, so they moved with water. So it was my first time in using these markers and yet moving the marker around with water. And more practicing with the same thing. This was when I ran out of modeling paste, but I still wanted to figure out a way to put some texture in. So I just cut up a couple of clothing tags and added those to the collage. And this was again working with those markers, but this time I used gesso under the markers and an acrylic paint. I had rolled off some leftover paint, and so I tried to use the markers, but this time with a different surface, just to see what the markers would do. Here I decided to go back to making the hair all something, but instead of magazine pictures, I used a rubber stamp. And then I took from the same set and I thought, well, these look like skirts. So I decided to turn the upside down and right side up flowers to make skirts. But again, I still haven't gotten the idea of where the backgrounds don't overwhelm the focal points. A background just waiting for somebody to do something. Here was some drawing that I did, but I wasn't happy with them. So as I tell you, if you're not happy, turn the page. Now here was my introduction to Diane Reevely, and she's the one that came up with this journal, but I didn't realize that at the time I didn't put the two together. And so I made my own collage papers, and I was learning how to use borders to make a more distinct border. And she is a woman who really uses a lot of color, so I wanted to use a lot of color. So this is when I really started to blossom with color. And again, I was keeping it up, but I started doing the sketches in a sketchbook of faces, and I cut them out. I just touched them with a little bit of marker, but kept the bright colors going, the distinct border, and again, using some more of my own ephemera, because I just honestly couldn't afford to keep buying ephemera, and I thought, well, I can draw flowers, and that's what I did. This was intuitive painting. I like her, not too crazy about her, but again, practice. She was first, she came second. I made the background and I just saw this woman in this background, and so I just used that dark technique and I let that background be her hair. Not finished. Really didn't like her. Turn the page. Here was where I was experimenting again with color, and I wanted to make black hair, but I wanted it to still have color. So that's what I was trying to do here. I had just splattered some inks in the background and then put her in, and I wanted her hair to read black even though it had a lot of color. Still practicing the same thing with the ink splatters. I got her drawn, but I never finished her. And then this girl, I got the watercolor part done, but I didn't get the finishing touches done. I still may finish her. I like her. Now this is much more recent. As a matter of fact, I just think she's beautiful, and I did do her in a current video. So here is a more current face, and look at where I came from. If we go back to these faces, let's see, where are those faces? There. I think you can see a difference. Just takes practice. That's the main thing. And now we're getting into more of the videos that I've already got. There's a video right now on my channel with this. So how did I jump so far in time? Well, because I kept adding journals, more journals, more journals. So that's how that happened. So let's take a look at this book. And we got as far as one of the paintings. Now this was my own design, and I liked it so much, and I ended up doing a beginning watercolor that's similar to this, but this one I had done years ago. And then here was where I started working in watercolor in this book, and I was creating, trying to create kind of a fantasy. And here I have the same little princess, and there's her castle. This was my beginnings of using washi tape to mask off and then do things in the little leftover boxes. Here was my first time in using a straw to blow the color. Here's another face, and again, we've gone back a few years, so trying to use other things instead of drawing hair and creating a background. And this was using a faux bleaching technique. Still working on that faux bleaching, and I was just also learning about using the distress crayons, the distress watercolor crayons. Now, this is a more recent one, and I was starting to flesh out an idea for a Christmas card. This is older, and this is me working on a collage. And I was tired of tutorials. I just wanted to try to work on my own, but I had already worked on trying to make the background not overpower the focal points and to create a border or some type of a frame around, which was fun. This was done in 2019, and we're in 2022, so that's how long ago that was. This was a challenge in me trying to limit my palette to just 3 colors, and so that's what that one is. And then this one is was a tutorial from the Frugal Crafter. And hers had a boat, and this was about my 3rd or 4th attempt at trying to create a colorful landscape. Now I decided I was going to try to do some kind of washy flowers. I wasn't crazy about it. I tried to fix it with a little bit of inking, but nah, it just didn't work for me. But I'm glad it's in my journal, and I'm glad I get to see again the progression. One thing I do like about this is the leaves. I really like the leaves. Here I was trying my hand at hair color that wasn't really hair colors because we were just starting to see people using crazy hair colors. But I wasn't crazy about it, so I really never finished it. But again, that's the beauty of a art journal. You practice, you turn the page. And this again was my attempt at creating a Christmas card. And I know this was about 3 years ago that I was working on this Christmas card. So this Christmas it'll be 4. I wanted to see if I could do my attempt at Zentangling. So this is with just Sharpie marker and graphite and then some watercolor pencils. But I wanted to, my doodling, I wanted the Zentangling to look like it had dimension. Can't say I made it, but I tried. And I was trying to do again a really colorful sort of a background. I wanted to see if I could get the perspective right on a cross, and I was getting ready for Easter cards. And this was a challenge having to do, I remember it had green in it, and it was supposed to represent nature. So I made these 3 little leaf fairies. This was a Mike Deacon, and it wasn't really a tutorial, but he was just saying sometimes you have to journal with no reason. And I thought, that's right. Sometimes I don't want to follow a tutorial. Sometimes I just want to do an art page for me. And that's what this is. Is it a masterpiece? Nope. Did I enjoy it? Immensely. Here's a background that needs something on top. Now, I cannot remember. I think her last name is Trent, but she does a video almost every day, and it's all learning watercolor. So I was trying to learn how to wash in some watercolor florals. This was, again, the Frugal Crafter, and she was trying to show us how to get that far away, misty sort of a look when you're doing a cityscape. So that was my attempt at a cityscape, but having it be fuzzy, and I learned a lot. Not crazy about it, but I learned a lot. This was my own creation. I wanted to make my own cityscape, but for the windows, I used a stencil. And then I let the stencil guide where the windows went. And there's really only 2 layers to this, but I like it. I think it turned out great. Again, am I ready to hang it on the wall? Nope. Did I enjoy it? Very much. Again, trying to do some watercolor, florals, loose. And this one you had to use simply square brush. So this was the brush I used for this, and it was the only brush you were allowed to use. So that was a tutorial that, again, learned a lot. I learned a lot. This was another Mike Deacon. I don't remember what the challenge was, but I know I enjoyed it. But then I started thinking, I really have it in reverse. It's the plaster that breaks away, exposing the brick, not the brick that washes away and exposes the plaster. But again, I had fun, and I learned how to do those bricks by, again, using that same square brush that I just showed you and using watercolor. I liked it. Just a drawing, never finished her. Now I'm trying to flesh out Christmas cards again. This was a watery floral, and after you had the florals on there, you just flooded the thing with water. So, learned a lot. Do I love it? No. Did I enjoy it? Very much, and I learned a lot. Now here was another attempt at creating a cityscape, but using stencils. So this is, both of them are Diane Reevely. I don't remember the names of these stencils, but using the stencils that wherever they fell, that's where the windows were. And then using this, and I just thought, okay, there's flowers in front of the buildings. Started it, didn't like it, turned the page. This was off of TikTok. This wasn't all that long ago, but I got the inspiration from a TikTok. It wasn't a tutorial, but I just did my own thing to create a bookcase. And a friend, knowing that I love cityscape, he sent me a picture, and it was a cityscape right in his own neighborhood. So I gave it a try. I do like this one. Watercolor, that's what this is. And then I also used some white gel pen, and I used some Sharpie fine liner. But I do like this one. Another challenge, and it had to do with maps. This was from Mike Deacon. Not really a tutorial, not at all. It was just words. I don't remember what the words were, but I can remember I needed to put a map in there. So there's my map. Well, I have done a lot of these little birds, and the challenge with them is they need to do something. So this time I decided maybe they found some popcorn. So I did the birds with the popcorn. And then I decided maybe I could use the birds in a Christmas card again. So I tried another project with doing the birds. And this is all watercolor. And this was very recent. This I did within the last 6 or 8 months. But it was January, but I was ready for spring. So I thought, well, what would my birds be doing in the spring? Gathering twigs to make their nests. So that's what I did with watercolor. Tried a different technique with the sky. And now we're into some of our tutorials. So my point is, as you see me marching through these journals, I hope that you can see the progress. And we're talking years. And again, in the meantime, I have started many other journals and had them all going at the same time. I think right now I've got about 7 journals all going now. It's not that some have been set aside for a few years, but because of dry time, because of different mediums, I've got multiple journals. So I hope this was inspirational. I hope that you can not get discouraged when you're saying, well, I'm just getting started and I don't like what, it doesn't matter. Have fun. Use what you have. And I look forward to someday watching you flip through some of your journals and seeing you progress. Am I still a work in progress? You bet I am. But you can see how my progress is going in my next videos, and I hope to see you there. Please remember to share, hit the like button, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Bye now.